Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abi.
That's me.
That's you.
And you. Did you want me to start this?
I just pointed at you. I just pointed at Abby. I'm like, go ahead, run this thing.
I was waiting for you. You leaned back looking all like you knew what you were doing.
All suave.
Yeah.
We're actually not even in our recording office
No.
or studio.
We are in a hotel room.
We are in a hotel room. We're all shacked up here with another couple.
Shacked up here.
I mean,
with another
we're hanging
couple.
out, in a hotel room with another couple.
Oh my gosh.
we're in
you're a
we're in
nerd.
Vacaville, California. We came down to meet some friends of ours that we really love.
Two of our favorite people on the planet.
And
Mostly because they're more offensive than us.
yeah, they really are way more offensive than us.
kidding.
I just can't believe them.
We invited them on because we love the message of their life.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
we love who they are.
Part of what Abby and I, today's going to be a fun and interesting conversation, I think, with regards to, we've had a lot of conversations about sex
Yeah.
here on this podcast.
Absolutely.
And Abby and I have been married 11 years, and I think that there's a lot of wisdom that can be gained in over a decade
Yeah.
of having sex and doing relationship. But the question really becomes, when you're old as dirt and you've been married since the beginning of time,
Oh my God.
what do you have to say about sex and connection? Like our friend Joey here, he may have a lifetime prescription to Viagra at this point. I don't know. He's like, I don't know what, how does sex even work at, 55 years old? Is that even real?
Better than you think.
Better than you think. So
Yeah.
one of the things is we brought some seasoned generals in who have had plenty of sex
Yeah.
and plenty of relationship marriage. You guys have been married how long?
32 years.
Woo!
32 years. I am 37 years old.
So they've been married almost as long as you've been alive.
That's true. You guys could be my parents.
Aw.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cute and weird.
Yeah.
Makes me feel really old.
As it should.
Okay. So really quick,
Abby's going to go ahead and give
let me jump in.
a real good introduction.
So we have Joey and Kelley Feste on our podcast today. They're great friends of ours. They live in San Antonio and they have their own business, which is an awesome business. And they also oversee a church. So they are busy, busy, busy. They travel and do all kinds of fun things all the time, but mostly they're the best humans on the planet. And
I'd agree with that.
yeah. I mean, besides us.
Joey's like, yeah.
Definitely. But we really did want to bring them on because they have such a great story that is relatable about the journey of sex throughout a lifetime, what it is like, the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, the hope, the redemption, the healing, the beauty. And I think it's going to be encouraging to people, whether they're single, because I remember when I was single, I needed to hear good stories of happily married people who had good sex lives, just to remember, because you see so much in media and you hear so many horror stories that can begin to paint your picture. And so this is going to paint hope for people, whether
Right.
you're single or you're married, whether you've had horrible times in your sex life or you've had great times. I think this is just going to be a really encouraging
And I'll
episode.
say this, like, the real question is, can someone go the distance, especially in today's culture? Can we go the distance, not just in the bed, but can we go the distance?
I don't even think you meant that one.
I didn't, but I was like, that was phrasing. But can you go the distance inside of marriage? Because right now, people especially are like, I don't think you can. And if you do, your soul's kind of dead by the end of it,
Right.
from the battles that you've incurred through it. But all I've seen in the stories and the conversations that the two of you have shared with us is a life that's only gotten progressively better and more beautiful and more connected. And I think that there's some beautiful mysteries beyond even the sex journey, but also the relational connection that I think that you guys can shed some light on for people who are on their journey trying to find out, is there an actual hope for future inside of marriage? Yeah.
So welcome, Joey and Kelley.
Thank you.
It's
old as dirt. I'm so glad, that Abby redeemed the introduction by saying some nice things about us instead of we're old as dirt.
He's lucky he's sitting across the table from my wife instead of next to her.
Yes, back in. Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourselves before we jump into your guys' story.
Joy's pointing at Kelley. Go, Kelley.
Yes, go, Kelley.
Well, we're Joey and Kelley Feste. We live in San Antonio, Texas. We have been married for 32 years, going on 33. We have 3 children, aged 30, 27, and 25. Aww. Joey has a financial advisory business and deals mostly with professional athletes, which keeps us super busy, and it's very interesting.
And keeps you normal.
Somewhat.
Sort of. Sort of normal. We are actually normal, and it's an interesting job. And then we lead a church. We started a church in our home 10 years ago, Kingdom Life San Antonio, and we didn't know what God was going to do, but it's actually now, we meet in a building. It's much larger than it was when we met in the home, and so our lives are super active, super busy, and but we're loving it. We love what God's doing in our midst.
And you love people radically well. I just wanted to put that out.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what really drives our heart, both in our business and in our church, and just with individuals that we love and like y'all, we want to spend time with. I mean, we love people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so it have to be very intentional in that. And one of the things that we've had to do over 32 years is be very intentional with each other before other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that people don't understand that, the intentionality with each other inside the context of a marriage relationship or an intimate relationship. We all want to go out and be very intentional about business, our work life and all these other things out here. And then all of it falls apart because we're not being intentional about our core relationships that matter the most.
It's not knowing our roles. We think, especially as men, I would say that work outside the house is that our roles to provide and nothing else. And the wife is supposed to do this, and it's like, do her role at the home, and then we come home and let's just walk through life. And then before you know it, you're living with a stranger that has a totally different role.
Yeah.
Well, and we certainly learned intentionality. We were not, we got married when we were 22 years old and
Wow.
kind of young and stupid. We got married the week after we graduated from college. We didn't know what we were doing, and we certainly didn't know about intentionality and trying to be intentional. So these are things that we've definitely learned and grown in over the years.
Speaking of that, coming into the marriage, just to get a foundation for the two of you, what's kind of a little bit of your history, if you were to generalize growing up, because you just made mention, Joey, we had 0 tools. What do you feel like your history was going into marriage at 22 years old?
Why don't you start with the good news and you start with your story?
Well, going into marriage, I grew up in a home where I'm doing air quotes, Christian home. And, it was religion. I didn't know that then, and my family didn't know that then. We're all well aware of it now. But so I grew up in a Christian home, got saved when I was 9 years old, loved Jesus the best I knew how, and was really pursuing him. My dad was one of the founding elders of the Presbyterian church we were in. My mom was a big Bible teacher. So my life was fully centered around God and church, but really religion. I grew up in a home where I never saw my parents fight, ever.
Wow.
And everything was swept under the rug. Emotions are scary. Keep your emotions. And, so I didn't realize this. This is just the package I'm bringing into marriage. So when I come into marriage with somebody who grew up in the exact opposite household, it was very interesting.
I grew up in a home that we went to church on Easter and Christmas because you had to show up. I grew up in a home where fighting and yelling was part of the day.
Right.
It was just part of it. Anger was the way you resolved your issues, or total disconnection, dysfunction, medication, coping, everything that was like that. My parents got divorced when I was 11. And so I had really no tools in my toolbox to be a husband, to be a father. I was a faithful friend, protector, faithful friend. I had all these qualities that were good, but they were all probably geared more toward, in protection, anger, violence, just aggression.
Yeah.
That was my outlet for how my dysfunction growing up.
Well, what was your relationship like with your dad? Because you said they divorced, so.
Yeah, my relationship with my dad when we were young, I mean, he was busy at the hospital. Like I don't, and I've told him this, I don't have many memories of him at home.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I just don't. And when they were home, it just wasn't pleasant.
Right.
And so, I've talked about this a lot of the church, just being vulnerable, sharing my story about my father. And now today he got saved at 63. I'm going to give you the good news about my dad.
Right.
Got saved at 63. He's 84. He loves God. We found our relationship level.
Right.
So we're at this level, love him. He loves me. We connect. But before that, to get there, it was a rough road because of just the pain.
Yeah.
And so getting through that pain of not trusting, big issues with Kelley and I, the first part of our marriage, because of my relationship was I couldn't trust, because he left, he got remarried, then he got remarried again.
Wow.
So it was big trust issues that were big issues us when we were dating. And then
so there was a feeling of abandonment coming into marriage from your childhood.
Oh yeah. I mean, I shared the story at church not too long ago, 2-3 weeks ago, where shared the story about how he left when I chased him down the hallway of a hotel and the elevator door closed. And I'm watching him leave.
Right.
And so it was that abandonment that was like, wait, this isn't normal.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't his fault, meaning that he just knew what he knew.
Right.
And so I've come to that conclusion that it was just, he was just pouring out what he had.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't his fault. It's almost like a Shaq moment, where the dad comes out and he sees his dad's life. And so my dad is a very sensitive man today. He's great, but we had to come a long way.
Yeah.
But that's the tool belt I had.
Right.
To come in.
You came in with none.
0 to
I
none
came in
except
with-
anger.
Yeah.
No. Well, I think Kelley would say that. No, I was a angry South Pole elf.
South Pole elf.
You were, well, yeah.
So what was marriage like in the beginning for you guys?
Well, I think one of the things that when we met, we had crazy chemistry. Like we just knew, like we do. We have like crazy chemistry. And so that could be good and bad, like lots of passion. We knew immediately that we wanted to get married. I mean, we both had dated other people and we knew within a couple weeks that we were going to get married, and we got married right away. But I didn't have very many tools either. So it's not like he came in with no tools. I did not either, even though my home life was completely different than his.
Yours felt like more of a facade, like it was a functioning facade.
Yes. And when you don't know that for how many years, I didn't even know.
Which is even a little bit worse sometimes, because if you come from Joey's background, you can be like, oh no,
I
clear
know I messed up.
dysfunction.
Yep.
All we did was yell and scream, where you're like, I wouldn't even know that there was a dysfunction there.
Right. And didn't know until I was in my 40s, early 40s.
Right.
It's like all of a sudden when my parents got divorced, our world came crashing down. And I was like, oh, that was one big fat facade. No wonder we've had all of these issues, because I'm going, no, this is how we're supposed to be. And that's not even real over there.
Right.
See, I knew more was her fault than mine.
Me too. I'm always like Abby.
When she finally woke up to it at 50 years old, 48
like,
years old, I
yes.
go, hallelujah. It's not all me.
Not quite. I'm just being very generous right now.
Not quite.
Okay, but so did I? What
So
your
in the
question
beginning
was?
of your marriage, what was it like?
So in the beginning of our marriage, there was a lot of, like Joey said, I think he had and I didn't understand this because we didn't really even know yet how to be that kind of vulnerable.
Yeah.
To where he's really sharing, why are you acting this? Like, I see you
Right.
being super angry or super mistrusting of me right now, but I don't know why that's happening.
Right.
Because we didn't know how to talk about those things. So there was just a lot of frustration all the time and anger and disconnecting. I'm withdrawing my spirit and pulling away from him, and he's mad and angry. And so I would
Which
say,
would make her even feel less. When I was mad and angry, she would shut down even more.
Right.
Because she felt disposable in that? Or
Not heard, not
heard.
understood.
Run over.
crushed,
Run over,
really,
crushed.
just kind of like, just kind of,
when I fought to win. So how do I
Right.
win? I make her quit.
Right.
Totally.
So would you say that you kind of felt like that classic male domination machismo thing coming in the early days?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And you would say, like, even, the church we're in and kind of some of the beliefs that we had was this very male-dominant, headship.
misogynist headship
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, that's like, submit,
You'll
woman.
submit. I'm the leader of this family, and you will submit.
Zero honor and
It was,
respect for
it
other
was,
women.
it was, yeah, it was bad.
Yeah.
It was bad.
And so everything in me is rising up against that, going, "Oh no, I will not."
Yeah, totally.
So I would say that, it was I got pregnant within the first year we were married.
Oof.
So we had a baby within 2 years.
It's a lot of change.
And that's a great
A lot of
story, but I don't know
change.
if we can tell it on this podcast, but
No.
okay.
Well, you can tell it if you want, but we don't have to tell it.
Well, I'm available. Yeah,
Yeah, go
share
ahead.
as you
No,
want
go
to
ahead.
share.
It's kind of funny, but go ahead. Keep going, honey.
Well, I don't know. No, I don't know what else you were
Yeah,
going to say
so when
about
we
it.
got into marriage, we didn't know anything about anything except, we're in a house, I'm working, and on our 1-year anniversary, she gets pregnant. So we're 22
How
years
did
old.
that happen?
We're on
Still
a 1-year
confused?
anniversary at a place called Gray Moss Inn, and our kids love this story. And so,
Little Joey particularly loves this
so
story.
if our kids are in my list, so we're driving back, and she wanted me
Oh gosh,
on the side of the road in the car
That was it.
wanted
of
me.
our,
me.
of our 1986 Grand Wagoneer.
You have to really want somebody to do
you
that
really
in a car.
do. Because like we
That's a
had
side
Grand
of the
Wagoneer,
road.
plenty of room.
Oh,
Yeah.
the wagon.
It wasn't like the
Wagoneer.
Volkswagen Bugs of
Joey
today.
was conceived, and I had no idea. I was playing golf with a buddy of mine, Randy West, and I come home at 22 years old, and there's a teddy bear and a card on my bed. We had
Surprise, you're
negative
gonna be a
money.
daddy.
I just started out
Negative
business. We had
money.
negative money. I was trying to play the Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes to see if I could win. We had zero money, and
I
all of a
still
sudden
play
I
that.
opened this card and it says you're going to be a daddy. And it was exciting and fearful at the same time.
Terrifying.
Yeah,
Oh.
because I was going, one, I have no money. What do I do with a kid? I
Right.
have a dog, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to work that out, and trying to work the dog situation out. And all of a sudden now my 22-year-old wife is pregnant.
Right.
And so it was crazy, but it
Oh,
was the
wow.
best. Joey, it was
yeah.
the best thing that ever happened to us
Wow. I love that.
because it made us lay down a lot of selfishness
Yeah.
and it was good.
So, what do you feel like was the first turning point in your marriage?
I think when we went to counseling, actually, I think it was 6 years into it. Mm-hmm. We were.
What made you guys go to counseling?
Well, the irony in it is like I told her before we go into counseling, I said, we need to go to counseling, and this guy's going to tell you how wrong you are.
I'm serious. He really
Seriously.
He dragged me into counseling.
That was 19.
Determined to fix me.
I dragged her into counseling, determined to fix her. It was 1993.
Because she wasn't submitting enough.
Well,
is that why?
everything. It was just we were so disconnected. We had no idea to connect. We had 2 kids at that point. She wasn't pregnant with Annie yet, and it was just we were. Just because we're going to be talking about sex, I'll bring it up. But our sex life was just it was just there was nothing in it.
Right.
There was action without any intimacy, connection, emotion. She felt numb,
Yeah.
and I felt dominant.
Right.
And so that's kind of where we were at that point. And so I wanted to go see this guy named Mike McCloskey and have him fix her. And so-
I've had some of those guys come into my
Oh
office.
gosh! So I was 22 plus. I was 27 years old. I was making a lot. I was making more money, and all of a sudden I was arrogant and prideful. And we went in there, and I wrote this guy a check for every week for 9 months. And I finally asked the guy. I said, "Hey, when is her turn?" He goes, "Not for a while."
He's busy handing
But
you your ass.
That was when she actually first heard my story about when my dad left. And so when I told the
It's
story
the first time, 6 years into
6
it,
years
before that gets
that I
revealed.
shared, hey, this is the
details.
trauma, the details of what happened. Where the elevator door's closing, I'm hanging on to him, chasing him down the hallway, boom. And I look up, and my wife and the counselor are bawling, crying.
Wow.
And I don't know how bad I was crying. All I knew was I was scared because I'm looking. I said, I am really screwed up that my counselor's crying. That if I can make this guy cry with some of the stuff he's heard,
Totally.
I'm really screwed up.
Right.
And I think it didn't get just 180 degrees, but it put us on a path of, okay, this isn't right.
Yeah.
And so fortunately we learned at 6 years into marriage that we need to work intentionally on this. And it didn't go great right away.
Right.
Because there was things she had to work on, things I had to work on. But in that, it was the trajectory was changing at that point.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you agree?
Yes, for sure. And I think that And I used to say this, and again, we had no tools. We didn't understand. But, Joey's main love language is physical touch. And I know it. And sex is a big deal. And sex is a big connecting point.
Let's talk about
and
sex,
I know
baby.
that. And I get that. And so, but I was always trying to communicate. You don't understand. Like, everything in me is shut down. Like, I'm so mad at you right now. Mm-hmm. My mind, I'm
broken.
I can't even engage. Like, a woman's mind, I have to be able to connect on a deeper level than just physical sex. So that was such an issue in our marriage.
Especially when you feel unsafe.
Yes.
Yeah. And
like you're feeling unsafe with the intensity, the aggression, the fact that you don't know where he's at, whether or not.
And I was unsafe for her.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know that at the time, but I was.
Yes. And so in your body, you're like, I don't want you to be that close to me.
Well, and so what happens, and now
safe.
because I know about the brain-body connection, you can't. Physically, your body is not responding because you're in self-protection mode or fear mode.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have language for that back then, and I would try to tell him, like, this feels weird. We are having sex, but my mind, I'm having to try to be engaged, and I'm not. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like being disassociative and feeling like outside of your body.
Yeah.
Totally.
And it's not healthy.
And I think that happens to a lot of people.
It does happen to a lot of
and
people.
I could tell. But but at that point in my life, it was like I was getting my needs met.
Right.
So
so I think the reason I was saying that is the turning point being when he began opening up and being more vulnerable, and I could see this tender side of him, and actually, you're this scared little boy, and that it makes complete sense why you would be so self-protective and all of those things. For me, that just opens up my heart to go, oh yeah, I am available. Like I can connect with you.
I can. There's something connectable.
Yes.
What most people don't understand is anger disconnects often, and so it's easier to have non-vulnerable emotions when you're scared.
For sure.
Like anger.
Anger. Or aggression or defensiveness.
Intimidation.
But vulnerable emotions are what invite intimacy in. But most people are taught to avoid vulnerable emotions at all costs.
Yes.
But exactly, when he got vulnerable, you were like, oh,
yes,
I can see a human there.
And I want to connect with that.
Yeah.
And that's, as a side note, even with you and I, when I've been willing to go, oh, I'm sad right now and I really hurt.
Yeah.
Especially in some sort of fight that we're in or whatever. And I allow myself to feel my pain enough that I cry. Not that I'm just trying to turn on waterworks, but I'm like, oh no, this actually just hurts. I can see you come and meet me in that place and want to come close to me in that rather than be at further war.
Yeah.
I think one thing I would add is that, just for the people listening on this call, is that one of the things that we knew that we valued each other so much, loved each other so much, we just didn't know how to love each other and how to receive love from one another. And it is that we valued each other so much, we were committed to change it. And the hard part, and why I think marriages break up, is one person's not willing to change.
Yes.
And they bail. Yeah. And we were both willing to change at different paces because we didn't know what we didn't know. Totally. We were uncovering this onion of my pain, her pain, all this kind of stuff. But we valued the marriage to say, let's keep going. And as we did, we realized it wasn't just my fault or her fault. It was, we brought pain into this thing. We had to process it. And I want to encourage people on the call that don't give up. Yeah. Just make sure you're both in it. Yeah. And if you're both in it, then there's a
you can
path.
Overcome anything.
There's a path of just incredible breakthrough that can happen in your marriage, and you can be married 32 years and have better sex life than you had when you were married your second year.
Right. The key really there was what you said was the humility to want to change and the value for the relationship in the first place. Because again, if we don't have that humility inside of us saying, oh, there's something inside of me that's willing to go change and grow, then all of a sudden there's nothing to work with.
Just an ounce of humility.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say that when we went there I was humble. I just say that I had an open, and like when you put a knife in it and wedge, just enough to get something in that goes, okay, there's a change. And
we both had, there was not, and even in counseling a lot of people, if there is a thought in my mind that I have an out, I'm going to take the out.
Right, absolutely.
I'm so unhappy. We're both miserable. I'm going to take that out all day long. So we both did have this high value of we don't have an out. Right. And it's not of this martyr thing. It was like, we actually do love each other, and we're trying to figure out how to be able to love each other well and receive that.
And that was the second half of what you said there, because there are people historically, we had generations past that said there is no out, but there was no desire to actually be in. It was like, I just can't get out.
I just can't get out. There's no hope attached to that.
Right. At all.
And so when you, though, are saying, it's not like I was in chains saying I have no out. It's like I am going to choose in all day long.
Yep.
And and this was harder for me, too, because I think even my pride looks different than Joey's. Like Joey, we could say, oh, he's being prideful right now, but mine is so passive. Mine is much more quiet and, air quotes,
passive aggressive.
Passive aggressive.
I was aggressive. She was passive aggressive.
Yeah.
That was a thing. And so that was one of our things.
But so what I recognize too is, again, with the facade, because you were talking about how you are with Abby and like when you're in that moment, not trying to turn on waterworks, but I also could not get in touch with my emotions. So his could look really scary because it was demonstrative, anger and rage and violence.
Yeah.
And mine was so shut down. And in my home, my parents both grew up in homes of very abusive homes.
Yeah.
So they came in and were like, we will never do that. So they never fought in front of us. And high emotions were really scary in my house.
Right.
So you couldn't have them.
Yeah. They reacted from their parents.
Right. And they did the exact opposite. So then we grow up and I realize I am not in touch at all with my emotions.
Right.
And so it was way later on in counseling was Mark Jones. And I don't remember what was happening, but he was trying to get me to identify an emotion. Well, how does that make you feel? And I was like, I don't know.
Right.
Sad. He's like, no, here's this list of emotions and I'm supposed to circle them. And I remember thinking, this is so crazy that I'm a 48-year-old woman and I am not able to describe my emotions.
One of the funny stories was, so we're at this love after marriage deal and we're talking about forgiveness. And so we write down stuff that, we know we hurt one, how we hurt one another. And I knew some really sensitive things the night, and which we'll probably discuss them, where she lost her virginity to me and different things. And I was crying and I apologize. Please forgive me.
Well, there's specific wording in this little booklet that when I did this, I am sure that it made you feel this.
So I showed her mine and
and you repent.
And I repent. So then, here I give her my list and she goes.
That was long of all the things you've done.
And so then we shared how I was hurt and how it made me feel. And she goes, so when I did this, it made you feel, and she looked at me and goes, I really got nothing.
When I did this to you, I can see how it made you feel bad.
And I looked at her and go, you're the worst repenter ever.
You're the worst repenter ever.
It's like Monica on Friends, the worst, best back rubber. Yes. She's the best, worst repenter.
Yeah, Joey's quicker to repent than I am. So there you go.
Yeah.
Because you just didn't understand Kelley emotions.
Right.
So you're like, I wouldn't even know. The ability to sympathize or empathize, all of that, you're like, I have no idea.
Right. I knew I felt, and always have, I feel very deeply.
Yes.
Right.
And I am a feeler. But I could not identify necessarily what I was feeling and connect with.
Wow.
So anyway, that was an issue for sure.
Okay. So one of the things I love about you guys now, and then we're going to have you guys share your sex story of your life and seasons in that, but is that you guys are now one of the most equal. You're an introvert, Kelley, so you're not as like loud as Joey, but you guys are one of the most equally powerful. It's really incredible to see you come from a church background that is male dominated and your natural disposition being dominating to a place where you guys are one of the most equally powerful. You throw her forward and
100%
Joey and
behind
over
her.
and over and over again. Just really quick, how did that transition happen for you guys?
I think, I think both when we kind of put religion on the back burner and got spirit filled.
Yeah.
And that we realized that about the kingdom of God and the value of people and just God opening up our hearts, not only to each other, but to him, to allow him to do a deep work in us, soften my edges, that I can be strong without having to be overbearing, that I can do these things, and where Kelley gets in touch with her emotions, but she can speak to that. But it was God just shaving off a lot of my rough edges and not being afraid of her power and strength, but celebrating it.
Yeah.
And so, I tell her now she's my favorite teacher. You know, she's a prophetic teacher that is so powerful, and no matter what John MacArthur says. But it was one of those things where she's powerful in her own right, and I want to celebrate what God's put in her.
Yeah.
So I'm not afraid of it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think I always, my whole life, I had a very strong sense of a call. Like I had a strong sense of call in my life. I did not know what that looked like, what that meant.
Like
And-
call purpose.
Like, yeah, like this strong
there's
purpose and
for my
destiny.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have an interesting birth story. I don't know if you want me to tell that really quickly. Did I tell you my birth story? Mm-hmm. It's just super quick. When my mom got pregnant with me, she and my dad were just dating there at SMU. She was 19 years old, and it was 1964. And she thought, well, my parents will disown me.
Kill me. Yeah.
If they found out I'm pregnant. So I need to have an abortion. I need to do something about that.
Yeah.
Well, in 1964, that was illegal. But she found there was a doctor in Lubbock, Texas that she could go to. And so she went to go have it. And I'm making this long story very, very short. But she said when she's sitting in there and she's waiting, fills out all the forms, she's in her gown.
And she's only like 6 weeks pregnant.
Yeah, she had been
7
a counselor at camp when she found out. And so she gets in there and she's laying on the table. And the doctor comes in to perform the abortion. And she said that as soon as he starts to do the examination, his eyes grew wide in terror. And he stepped away and he said, you need to get off my table and get out of this office. I will not do this abortion.
It's crazy.
And she's like, no,
Wow.
wait. I just missed my period. I am,
Right.
maybe 6 weeks pregnant. He's like, no, you need to get off this table. You are not going to find anyone to do this abortion. And he ran.
Wow.
So she said she's laying there and she's thinking, okay, this is so crazy.
So weird.
What's
I'm
happening?
paying you money to
Yeah,
do
like,
this.
hello. So she did not know God at that time. She did not grow up in a Christian home, but she said she was driving back to Dallas and she just had this overwhelming presence come over her in the car. And she said, I didn't know then what it was. And now I know it was Holy Spirit. And all of a sudden she just had this overwhelming thought in her head, you have to have this baby.
Wow.
So she went home and told her parents, and no, they were not happy.
Yep.
But then I come along 7 months later and my parents got married.
Wow.
And stayed married. So she didn't tell me this until I was 21 years old. She took me
Wow.
to New York for my birthday. And she tells me this story. And it was weird because, again, I said, I've always had this really strong, just deep knowing of God and sense of purpose and destiny and call in my life, whatever that looked like. So when she told me that, I went back to the bathroom in this restaurant, this fancy New York restaurant. I was like, oh my gosh, Lord, what do you want me to do with my life? I'm thinking, I'm going to have to go be a missionary in Africa now. And I don't want to do that.
Totally.
Anyway, so that for me, but Joey, so when Joey and I get together, and I'd been a teacher for my whole life, and I've always taught women's ministry, but when I started getting called to speak places where men were, because of the tradition I come out of, I literally would be in a room speaking where now men are listening to me too.
Yeah.
And on this little ear over here, the enemy's going, you're being unbiblical. You're teaching men. Women shouldn't teach men. And Joey was actually my biggest champion. And he was like, no, this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Wow.
We do
Come
need
on.
to hear your voice. So like you said, he has always pushed me forward, and he is super strong and powerful, but that has enabled me to come up underneath him, if dare I say, in a stronger way.
Yeah.
More powerful. Because he is so powerful and strong, I need that.
Right.
And I get to be equally powerful.
And then for you, just inside the marriage too, did it feel like things equaled out where he wasn't dominating and you both were having a voice?
Yes, for sure. I mean, especially over, I'd say, the last 15 years is where that all changed.
How?
I think, again, when he started becoming vulnerable and was more in touch with his own emotions, and I was with mine, and we had a completely different perspective. I mean, we were in a very just religion, just a Bible church. There's no gifts of the Spirit, any of that. So when all of that shifted, he was super attracted to Holy Spirit in me. And I changed so much when I got filled with the Spirit 25 years ago. And he kind of thought I was crazy at first because he was still
Thought you
not
flew
sure.
around on a broom.
Yeah, he was like, are you speaking in tongues in front of the children? Hope not. So I think that when he became so attracted to that, everything shifted. And then he, the same. I didn't feel like he was trying. I mean, of course, it was slow change. I didn't feel like you were trying to dominate me. I didn't feel like you were trying to assert your leadership.
I think that's a good point. I don't think what people have to realize in the process, it's not overnight.
Yeah.
There's not a pill, a one-shot pill, and you're
Right.
good. Your
Right.
husband, you're not a better husband, you're not a better wife. That it takes time. That old stuff still comes up in the midst of a trajectory of change and transformation, and people get discouraged. Like, well, I thought you changed.
Right.
Well, I thought you weren't going to do this anymore.
Yep.
It's like, I mean, you're trying to teach a dog that bit not to bite, and it's going to bite you every once in a while, you know. But eventually, your goal is here. And I think marriages get so discouraged because they're judging the next day of a repentance, like, forgive me for this. Kelley would ask her, I forgive you for this, you know, vice versa. And the next day or next week, you would do the same thing. It's like, see, I told you.
Right.
And it's like, there's no room for growth
like,
there.
There's been no change. I throw you right back where you were.
Go back to go. Do not collect $200.
Nothing's changed.
Right.
You just go through it. And I think that's what was great, where we had to check each other. And it wasn't always perfect. There was where she would throw me back to go, you know, and vice versa. And we would use it as ammo until, you know, it was ammo of see. And I think that is just so destructive to progress, because you go, to Kelley's point earlier, you lose hope.
Yeah.
Well, I'm on a mud hill. I'm taking a few steps and I slide right back down in your eyes.
Yeah.
And so marriages give up.
Well, and let me just, so personally and practically, one of the things that I did many years ago, and it was still tough. And Joey is so strong, and he would say things to me, say a hurtful comment. I don't know, something strong.
Probably a hurtful comment.
And I learned, instead of doing what I wanted to do, which was disconnect or rail back or tell him, oh yeah, you know, you haven't changed, nothing's changed. I learned I would go back in by myself with God, and I would connect that to him. And I'd be like, okay, Lord, this is what Joey just said to me. I don't think it's true. What do you say about this? And I need you to meet me here. And I did that for a long time. And so instead of me trying to, in that moment, fix this with him, I was able to take that thought, connect it to God, hear what he said about that situation, and everything changed.
Because you were connecting to a higher truth. Even if Joey was acting out, you were going, I'm not actually going to give you the power of my identity any longer in these moments. I'm going to find out like a higher, like what God says, this higher voice of unconditional love about who I am as a person, so on and so forth.
Yes, and doing that over time, that is what my identity got so solidified in truth with a capital T, like in who he said I was. And I think that is when I was able to then become stronger even in our relationship. And you want that. You want me to be equally strong. I know that. Like he will be like, Kelley, come on, like
push back.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's go.
So
Swing
it was
back,
super helpful.
You know? And I think that was really, you want to know another turning point. We had these different flags, like 6 years into marriage counseling, this was that. Because now it wasn't an argument. And then she could also see that my intentions weren't to be that way. I was struggling getting out of it.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know. And so you're retraining a dog to do something different. And it was just like, I'm going to mess up. But because she went to God, it allowed her not only grace, mercy, forgiveness, capacity to push through, which allowed me room to grow.
Yeah.
And then when I grew and then I woke up, you know, then everything changed.
Yeah.
You know, everything changed.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, I have hiccups. And that was an amazing little episode we just did.
It was an amazing episode. And everybody's on their seat waiting to hear the rest, waiting to hear about their sex life.
I want to know what their sex was like. They're going to go into deep detail explaining it.
Justin.
No, they're not. They're not going to do that.
But they're going to share.
That would be really painful for their children to listen to.
It would be so painful. But they are going to share their journey, and it's going to be amazing. And we didn't mean to cut it off, but it is so good, and we want you to get the full context for their journey. And so it
ended up becoming a really long conversation. Well, really long. It just, we allowed the conversation to continue to evolve because there were necessary things inside of that conversation that I think help us to understand why their sex life is good and what they had to go through in order to get to a good sex life.
And you're going to stay tuned because it's so hopeful and enjoyable and funny and fun.
So tune into the next episode for that. But before we do.
Yeah, I do want to quickly mention, so our Living Fully Alive course is coming up, and I wanted to talk about it.
14 weeks.
Yes, I wanted to talk about it on this episode because if you were listening to them talk about how they wish they had tools in their marriage, they wish that they could have known things. They didn't know what they didn't know. Well, we didn't either. And so that's why we created this course so people can figure out what they don't know and they can actually go on the journey of healing. Whether you are stuck in life, you feel depression or anxiety or fear, or you don't know who you are, you don't know where you're going, it's a great course for you. If you are in a relationship, last year we had engaged couples, we had dating couples, and we had married couples. And across the board, everyone said, This was a game changer. It gave us common language. It gave us common core values. It helped us understand what was happening in the other person. It helped us learn how to relate. We were able to clean up messes from years ago because of this. And it created deep intimacy because we're having conversations about things we haven't had conversations about. It's an incredible thing. And then the other person it's for is if you want to be a life coach, we actually designed this. If you want to be a life consultant, life coach, or if you do counseling, we had several counselors take it last time. It's just how to walk people through the transformation process. So you're learning, how do I work? How does humanity work? And then how do we help people heal? It's for everyone. You will want to do it. We're really trying to get people through this podcast to invest in being their best self. And so this course we're doing, it starts in January 6th, and you get discount if you do the 14th through the 17th of November, early enrollment.
And I want to add that when it comes to New Year's resolutions, those things last about a week. That's part of even the reason why we launch in January is we want to give somebody tools to redefine their entire new year, where it's a 14-week journey where you go, hey, I want to better my life. What does that look like? All right, I'm going to get on board with a group of people and I'm going to go on a journey with my heart that I can't just run away from and ignore. Yeah. And so it's practical step powering you to create the life you want to live. And that's really what we want to do with 2020 is practically lead people on a journey of finding out the life that they love. Yeah. Live the life you love 2020. That's what that is. That's what we're doing. So check it out at stumblconsulting.com, or you can email us at lfa@stumblconsulting.com. And early bird enrollment starts November 14th to the 17th, and class starts the 6th of January. So we basically made it the price that if you met with a counselor for a month, it's cheaper than meeting with a counselor weekly for a month. That's the goal, is that you can actually get all of the healing that you want at a price that is doable for you. And thanks for joining us, and thanks for putting up with any of my hiccups that you may have heard. Bye now. Hiccup.